Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Fort Wayne Community School Board of Trustees. We begin each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Although I saw online today there was a public schools pledge. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. I probably should have, maybe we should have done that one as well. So, board members, roll call.
Good evening, Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Maria Norman, member at large.
Ann Duff, member at large.
And I'm Julie Hollingsworth, elected from District 1. And to my far left is Janet Doherty, clerk of the board. Good evening. And our superintendent, Dr. Wendy Robinson.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we have some awards and recognitions, and since this is Public Schools Week, we are honoring our nation's public schools, our students, and the many school professionals who work to help students achieve their greatest potential. And so we have a highlight video to show.
All means all.
All languages.
All abilities.
All skills.
All dreams.
So what do you want to be when you grow up? A rapper. A DJ. A police. A doctor. An artist. A football player. Vet. My favorite subject is math. I love subtracting the numbers and adding more. I like to draw a lot. Recess. All means all.
Dr. Robinson, is there anything you want to highlight? Are we
We were,
celebrating this week?
we celebrate every single day.
Of course we do.
To absolutely celebrate. We were talking today about, we had a session on deep learning. And after that, we were meeting with some administrators, and we asked ourselves, when was the public schools started? And so we were all guessing, because we forgot. Back in 16, was it 34? And it was in Boston. And it is amazing that an institution that has lasted that long and had that much impact that we have to defend it. And so, you know, it's so much of what's happening now can't trace their roots back that far. So I think that is just something to be proud of. And we were talking about the number of graduates from this district and the impact they have worldwide, and how when you start interviewing people or you run into them, they remember elementary teachers and middle school teachers and high school experiences. So we just have a lot to be proud of, and we have to make this, every week should be Public Ed Week.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
I still say public schools and their mission to educate every single child, no matter socioeconomic background, no matter ethnicity, no matter disability, is probably the greatest democratic institution that's ever been developed. And there are a lot of countries that don't have that mission to educate every student. And so it's great to live in a country that does. Okay, so now to the most exciting thing on the agenda, the Northeast Indiana Tech Fest competition. It's recommended that the board recognize Snider High School for placing first overall and Northside High School for placing second overall in the Northeast Indiana Tech Fest competition. 17 schools from Northeast Indiana competed in STEM-related events: Mysteries of Science, Mathematical Madness, Programming, Think or Sink, Engineering in a Box, Cybersecurity, and Capture the Flag. Those sound like Jeopardy categories. The outcome of each competition was scored against all schools. Snider placed first overall with earning first place honors in Mysteries of Science competition, second place in the Mathematical Madness competition, second place in Programming Challenge competition. Northside placed second overall with first place in Capture the Flag, second in Think or Sink, and third in Cybersecurity. So please come forward as your name is read so that we may congratulate. Whoa! It's a nice trophy. So from Snider High School, Desiree Clausen.
Let's do them separate and get a picture in between.
Okay.
Each student separate?
No, the school.
Oh, I was going to do that.
Wow.
Nice.
Ian Dyers? Kennedy Jester? Caden Klein? Jennifer Liu? Emily Meinzen? Hannah Macaro?
More than one?
Jared Mitchell?
I like that.
Terry, is that new? What was it? Noe? Okay, Noe.
Don't ever let us mispronounce your name.
Soraya Ramos?
Let them jingle. That's the.
Hayden Tipman? Eric Van Zandt? And John Tudor, teacher. Joseph Wilhelm, teacher. And Chad Hissong, Snider principal. So squeeze in, maybe make 2 rows.
I wouldn't wear it because I didn't do any work.
More intelligent up front. Step up, Chad.
Okay. You're done? It's quick. Get in the aisle.
We've got plenty of time.
This is it for us, the excitement. Right. Congratulations.
And Mr. Wilhelm, you graciously volunteered to tell us something about the competition. So if you'd step up to the microphone over there. And
No, it's okay. Let's not. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the competition. This is the third year that we participated from Snider, and it's a really neat opportunity that the Northeast Indiana Tech Coalition puts on for our students. It's a college and career fair with like 50 different companies from the area that sponsor booths so students can talk to them. We had some students already line up internships for the summer as well. So the competition is just really a part of the whole day. But we spent a few months preparing in the morning, getting ready for these events, and our science team actually placed first with a perfect score, so I told them I would call them out for that.
Oh, nice.
And it's just a really nice event overall. It's free for all schools in Northeast Indiana, and we're hoping that more and more go because it is a really great experience for them. And we're hoping to take an even bigger team next year. So
Okay.
So this is a regional event held when?
it's normally in November, and it's
Normally?
at McMillan Park Community Center
Okay.
here in Fort Wayne.
That's right.
And is there state competition then?
There is not in terms of this specific one. This is just Northeast Indiana.
Okay. Sounds like a great event.
It is. It is. And we're glad to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for probably donating your time to spend on this.
It's
a
not hard
really-
for these kids, so
It sounded like a really cool opportunity for them.
thank
So
you.
thank you. So next, we have from Northside High School, the second place overall in the Northeast Indiana Tech Fest competition, Logan Carter. Xavier Limcool. Honesty Newen. Abby Shearer. Ben Scribner. Alondra Shackelford. Connor Springer. Jillian Tracy. Jasmine Tracy. And Aiden Walton.
That's why she can get it out. Figured it out.
And we have Philip Springer, STEM manufacturing instructor, Andrew Schmitz, computer science instructor, and David West, Northside principal. Scoot in.
One of you can go on the other side, so we can see you. Can you see us? Almost. What do you need us to do? They just need to stop. Oh. Take your time, parents. Students. They were talking about your tech skills. I defended you. Did you get a good picture, man? Oh, okay. All right, so who wants to talk about Northside's adventure? Did we line somebody up? I should have known.
Atta girl.
Abby's on my advisory council, if you can tell. Get on up there, honey, and tell us.
So I guess I'd never done this before, and most of us are like first-year students. And we won awards and, was it Capture the Flag Sync and the cybersecurity events, and it was a good experience, like getting to like, you know, compete in all these things with like fellow students, and then also like getting to meet with companies that like are leading, I guess, in this field. So, yeah.
Can you tell us like what some of the events were like? What did you have to do?
I was in the cybersecurity event, so I guess we were like looking for like vulnerabilities within like this network. And we were like, I guess, trying to identify like different things like on the computer. So I guess I don't exactly know about the other events that were there.
So who's going back next year? Okay, we'll see you here next year, okay? Jim?
Yeah, congratulations.
And parents, you're welcome to stay, but if you feel the need, we won't be upset with you.
You won't hurt our feelings if you leave.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Next year, I'm going to have to check out the Tech
Yeah.
Fest competition
Yeah.
because, you know, I had to miss 2 days of pickleball because the Tech Fest competition is at McMillan. So next year, I'm just going to check it out. Sounds interesting. I want to see what Capture the Flag is all about.
And then play pickleball when it's over.
Oh no, they're with setting up and tearing down. It kind of takes 2
Oh.
days. Okay, next, moving to the business part of our meeting, we have our consent agenda, and these are things that come to us every meeting. They include the minutes from our last meeting on February 10th, vouchers and payroll, vouchers for the period ending February 24th, payroll for the period ending January 31st, and the personnel report. And members have already seen all of these. So do we have a motion and a?
I'd move approval of the 3 items listed under the consent agenda, Madam Chair.
Second.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, whoever. Flip a coin. So, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, Dr. Robinson, was there anything in the personnel report that you wanted to highlight?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Okay, next we have removal of outstanding warrants. It's recommended that certain checks be removed from the record of outstanding warrants. A complete listing is attached. Indiana Code states that all checks drawn on public funds of a political subdivision of the state of Indiana that are outstanding and unpaid for a period of 2 or more years as of the last day of December of each year are considered void. Attempts are made to notify all persons or vendors who have outstanding checks valued at $10 or more. Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend is available to answer any questions. Do we have a motion and a second?
Move for approval.
Second.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Ann. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we've got a Title II Part A grant. It's recommended that the board approve the application for and acceptance of funds from the Indiana Department of Education for 2019 Title II Part A, supporting effective instruction in the amount of $1,550,243.41. This funding is provided to schools under the Every Student Succeeds Act. The allocation is based on enrollments for both public and non-public schools in the Fort Wayne Community School attendance area. An amount of $349,128 has been allocated to serve identified non-public schools for Title II Part A. Title II is an entitlement grant provided to supplement the general fund. The funds are used to facilitate and implement professional learning. The grant is just used for administrators, certified and classified staff of all grade levels. This non-competitive grant is managed by Ramona Coleman, Director of Professional Learning, and addresses advancement intended and outlined in Goal 1, achieve and maintain academic excellence. So Ramona Coleman, Director of Professional Learning, is here to answer any questions. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Maria. Any questions? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have the Title IV, Part A grants. Recommend that the board approve the application for and acceptance of funds from the Indiana Department of Education for the 2019 Title IV, Part A Student Support and Academic Enrichment in the amount of $940,605.52. So this funding is provided to schools under the Every Student Succeeds Act. The allegation is based on enrollments for both public and non-public schools in our attendance area. An amount of $196,077 has been allocated to serve identified non-public schools for Title IV Part A. These funds are intended to improve students' academic achievement by increasing capacity of the local education agency and non-public schools' ability to provide all students with access to a well-rounded education. Again, this non-competitive grant is managed by Ramona Coleman and Director of Professional Learning. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Steve. Any questions?
Could we, Ramona, could you give us some concrete examples about how we in the non-public schools spend this $2.4 million? I know I'm looking at the words professional learning and academic achievement, but is this essentially for salaries, or do we support activities, or a little bit of both?
So both grants support salaries and activities for both. So non-public, they have to do an application that tells basically in the categories of technology, content areas as far as health and wellness that they have to look at, and the same thing for us. So for Title IV, for example, we have 3 categories that we're looking at, A, B, and C, that well-roundedness educational component that we're looking at, our technology advancement, and then our mental health and wellness. For the public school part, we have to make sure that we address all 3 components. Mm-hmm. Non-pubs just have to choose one of those components that they're addressing in their application.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And one of the things we almost have as a rule is when you look at this amount of money, we are allowed to take portions of salaries, but we steer away from hiring people with this money, because then you can't support with the amount of money that we get much of anything. So professional learning, those kinds of activities, but we rarely, other than when they allow us to take a portion, like a Ramona's salary or something like that, but we usually don't hire people.
Are there districts that do that?
Ramona, I
Yes,
don't know.
because one component, especially of Title II, you can have class size reduction. And so basically, based upon the formula that we use within district or within those districts, they can choose to hire teachers to make sure that they have smaller class sizes.
Yeah.
Again, based upon our formula that we use and working with Kathy Friend, our Chief Financial Officer, that when we really look at that, we'd be more supplanting instead of supplementing the general fund, because basically we would hire a teacher anyway if we had over amount of students in that teacher's classroom.
Just over the last 3 years, what's been the variance? I mean, how much has this fluctuated from year to year? Is this about the same amount we get every year?
So it's about the same amount every year. So basically, if it's an increase for us in that allocation amount, then that means that it's going to be an increase for non-pubs for that equitable amount that we share with them. So this year for Title II, it's about a $30,000 increase from last year. And for Title IV, we have about a $60,000 increase from last year.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Ramona.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I already did the motion in the second, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, next we've got some site and traffic improvements. It's recommended that the board approve the following construction contract for site and traffic improvements at various sites. The base bid from API Construction Corp. is for $504,640. There's an alternate for Wayne High School for just under $24,000 for $528,560. This project includes miscellaneous asphalt repairs and resurfacing, drainage improvements, and concrete pavement and walk replacements at several buildings. Martin Riley Architects and Engineers designed the project. This recommendation is within the program budget, which is identified in the capital projects plan and is funded from the operations fund. Project specifications require the work to be completed by August 7th, 2020. Questions will be addressed by Director of Facilities Darren Hess, and there you can see the three bids, of which API Construction Corp. was the lowest. So do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Steve. Questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and Ann, you're going to handle physical plant improvements.
It is recommended that the board approve the following construction contract for roofing at 5 buildings. Washington Elementary, $263,300. Lane Middle School and Tolls for $364,400. Tolls for $38,800, and Forest Park Elementary and Northside, $554,900. And Northside, $18,000. That was an alternate, and there were a couple that were not accepted, for a total contract of $1,239,400. All replacements, these are for Fort Wayne Roofing and Sheet Metal. All replacements have been identified in our roof replacement plan, which provides for the replacement of all roof segments over a 25-year period. Martin Riley Architects and Engineers designed the projects. This recommendation is within the program budget as identified in the capital projects plan and is funded from a combination of the operations fund and the 2019 general obligation bond, the GO bond. Project specifications require the work to be complete by August 7, 2020. Questions will be addressed by Director of Facilities Darren Hess.
Okay, do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Steve?
Second.
Second. Questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, Maria's got flooring.
It's recommended that the board approve 2 construction contracts at various sites. Flooring replacements, package 1 through Jack Laurie Group, the base bid being $156,110, with alternates at the Anthus Career Center, Bunch Early Childhood Center rooms, Holland Elementary and Washington Elementary, for a total contract of $195,000. And then we have package 2 that we're doing through Strom Building Solutions with a base bid of $96,391, with alternate projects at Fairfield Elementary and Young Early Childhood Center, for a total contract of $119,966. The projects include flooring replacements at several buildings. Bona Vita Architecture designed both projects. The projects are funded from the operations fund, which are identified in the capital projects plan. This recommendation is within the project budget, and project specifications require the work to be complete by July 30, 2020. And Darren is still here to answer any questions.
Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Steve. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Steve, you want to do G?
Sure. It's recommended that the board approve 2 construction contracts at various school sites. The 3 bids you see that are before us, the first one is General Building Systems in the amount of $443,500. The second contract, that contract is being recommended to go to Schenkel Construction. The second item for General Building Systems 2, also to Schenkel Construction. Their total contract bid, including alternate bids, is $567,600. And then finally, to Havel for controls, internal controls at Northside High School, and this is for $22,101. So that's the recommendation, that we approve these construction contracts at these various locations for those 3 amounts. The background information is the projects include general building system replacements. We use Kelty Tappy Design for the projects. The recommendation is within the program budget, which is also, as previously identified in the other projects, and this one too is in our capital projects plan and funded from a combination of the operations fund and the 2019 general obligation bond, our gold bond. The existing building automation systems are proprietary. Havel is the single source vendor for this work. And if we approve this tonight, the work should be completed before the start of the next school year on July 30th. And I just have a additional comment not listed here. I'm so glad to see us redo the Northside High School multi-purpose room. This board made a mistake in renovating a 22-foot pool that was not competition usable, and so we're going to turn that into a multi-purpose room, and I think that's a great idea. So just a little editorial comment on this recommendation.
Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Ann. Any other questions or for Darren? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and next we have mechanical projects. It's recommended that the board approve the following construction contracts for mechanical improvements at various sites. So the contractor is Current Mechanical for a base bid of $450,000, and 2 alternates at Southside for a total of $509,100. And from Automated Logic, the controls-based bid at the Anthus Automotive Center for $30,000. The projects include miscellaneous mechanical work at several buildings. The project was designed by Primary Engineering. The recommendation is within the program budget, which is identified in the capital projects plan and is funded from the operations fund. The existing building automation systems or controls are proprietary, and Automated Logic is a single source vendor. Work will be completed by July 30th, 2020, and Darren is still here. There were 2 bidders on the back. You can see on the back, Current Mechanical being the lowest. So do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Ann. Questions? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that concludes the business part of our meeting. And now we have a report. Oh, here it is. Becoming a Learning System. So Charles Kamick Jr., our Chief of Operations, will provide a report on becoming a learning system, leadership, and operations. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and to the board, and Dr. Robinson. I appreciate this opportunity to lay out what we're doing with leadership and operations in the district. Now, I've been told that sometimes my voice is soft, so just kind of look at me or nod or something to let me know if I'm speaking loud enough. A little bit about me. Kathy? Gotta turn it on?
Janet. Battery check.
I guess so. That's a good thing about supervising technology I have.
May have to go old school.
Yeah.
May have to go old school and
Hurry, Jack.
All right.
Way to go, Jack.
Okay, Dr. Robinson always accuses me, thank you, Jack, of being a booster for my alma mater, but I'm a proud Wayne High School grad, go you mighty Generals, and Purdue University, West Lafayette, and University of Wisconsin-Madison. I started my career with Fort Wayne Community Schools at Hannah School, which is, I think, across the street from where Dr. Robinson grew up, and is no longer there. But I relish the opportunity to come back to the community that I grew up in and serve in this capacity. I came back to Fort Wayne after spending 10 years in Pennsylvania to be HR director and became chief operations officer in 2010. Next slide, please. So the reason for my presentation is Dr. Robinson has a group of us working on 5 systems, and Get Nichols and I are responsible for the leadership system. Our other participants are Liz Bryan, Austin Couch, and Matt Sheeple. Next slide. You might notice that we have a few more people than normal here at the board meeting, but that's because I put out an SOS and asked for support for today's presentation. I prefer to remain in the background, so I said to my staff, any and all support and prayers would be appreciated. We are in the process of searching for an HR director, but I'm just going to ask the groups to stand with their directors. Mary Hess with Health and Wellness, so we have our able-bodied nurses here. Jen and Krista are always here, Marketing and Communications and Public Information. Ramona Coleman and her coordinators, the Professional Learning Group. Mike Manuel, I don't see Dan, but Mike's in charge of security. And technology is Jack Bird, who's ably helping me out at the computer and his direct reports. And then Director of Transportation, Frank Jackson, and one of his managers. Ironically enough, I get this question all the time. I do not supervise maintenance and operations, even though I'm the operations officer. That is handled by, ably handled by Kathy Friend. So becoming a learning system, there are 4 components: beliefs and vision, roles and responsibility, building the system, and implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and adjustment. We'll start with beliefs and vision. As Faye pointed out in the last meeting, leadership is I want to say this properly. We know what our core business is. It's an instruction. But leadership is second only to instruction in the classroom, and I would venture to say leadership is critical in every capacity that we have with the district. And we are in the process of identifying what those skills are, how we can grow those skills in our staff, and how we can recruit people with those skills to come and work for the district. In institutions not as fortunate as ours, they only have a 30% engagement rate because the leaders in their organizations are not effective. And part of the problem that we have when we deal with the recruitment of leaders is, according to a Gallup survey, and I believe this is true from my own personal experience, that people don't know how to hire good leaders. And the Gallup survey report said that 82% of the time we hire the wrong people to be leaders. So it's a critical issue for us. And one more aside, Dr. Robinson, when she hired me to be Chief Operations Officer, she asked me pointedly, well, why should we give the job to you and not someone else? And I said, because the primary challenges for this district are going to be people issues. And leadership is about people. So I was glad for the opportunity that Ged and I can work on this project. So, next slide. As I've already stated, we believe that this is a critical part of what we do. And the board is still working on refining goal 4 as we work on the balanced scorecard. But it states in its preliminary form that we will attract, develop, reward, and retain high-performing staff. And I don't think there's any way for us to accomplish our goals if we don't manage employee systems well, specifically around leadership and hiring staff. Next slide. You have this handout because it's an eye chart for everybody else in the room. But this is something that we developed when Rita Turflinger and I were first starting out on the human capital management adventure. So this has been around for 5 years. And at the top of it, at the top of the chart, you'll notice that we start with recruiting strategy. And we have accomplished everything but the 2 things in each component. And one is, for those of you who can't read it, on the left is internal opportunities and on the right is external. And what we're working on now with the leadership is going to help us with onboarding and induction. And you'll hear a little bit more about the second red line on that eye chart, which is about growing your own. On the right, under external, it's again about onboarding and induction, and then how to recruit people that we don't normally see in front of our kids or in our work groups. So I'll talk a little bit about that more later. Next slide. Now this is under construction. We've already tinkered with it, but we felt it was very important now that we had a flow chart and we know how the hiring system works, that we be able to tell someone definitively what does it take to be a leader in Fort Wayne Community Schools. So I think Get reminded me that we have refined this definition and that we will be working with one more group, which is district support, to get their input, and then we'll have a final definition for you soon. Next slide. These are the non-negotiables, and we've been working with the Wallace Foundation, and one of the things they pointed out to us is you have to have certain things, characteristics that you're looking for in leaders so that people know what their expectations are. So strong ethics, empowering others, showing openness to new ideas. Next slide. And when we talk to these groups, we need to be able to explain to them how that affects their work. So teacher leaders, certified administrators, classified administrators, and classified staff are the groups that we're looking at right now. And as you go forward, next slide, these are the partners that are helping us with that work. So Learning Forward with Professional Learning. Patel for Kids has been helping us in a variety of ways, HR processes, compensation, job descriptions, and onboarding. The Wallace Foundation has been helping us with the principal pipeline and new pedagogies and deep learning. One of the things that I'm excited about with that is there is no such thing, in my opinion, as a terminal degree. Even lawyers and doctors have to get professional learning. Teachers are expected to do it. And I don't think that that should stop just with people who have those degrees. I think that bus drivers need to continue to learn and grow. I think that our teachers are already in that capacity. My direct reports, the nurses, all those folks need to be lifelong learners. And the NPDL is helping us with that across the board. Next slide. So our priorities, you may remember when we had the Teacher Incentive Fund that one of the target or one of the objectives that we had was to create a career ladder for teachers. because not every teacher wants to become an administrator, and they want to be effective in their buildings or across district in a wider role, but they don't necessarily want to be a principal or an assistant principal or director of HR or any of those. So when we worked on the TIF grant, we established this set of priorities in terms of teacher ability to be leaders in their buildings or across the district. Lead teachers, curriculum collaborators is the effort that we have in writing curriculum. We already had established quality improvement teams, or QITs, and those folks were specifically targeted to be leaders. We have a pilot going in the non-complex schools for mentor teachers. Predating me, there was a statewide program where people were identified as mentors. We paid them to do that work, and we are reinstituting that in a pilot in the district as a part of our work with the TIF grant. Building instructional coaches, curriculum tuners are coaches who are helping to refine the curriculum as it's written, and then we have district instructional coaches. Next slide. On the administrator, certified administrator side, we do a recruiting process through aspiring leaders. Once those leaders are selected, they go through the internship program. After the internship program, we place them in a role and they go through new administrator orientation. One of the things that we realized, and I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit from my notes, but one of the things we realized when we started doing the new administrator orientation was that administrators new to the district and even new administrators who may have been teachers in buildings do not have an idea of the scope and the size of our district. So we started doing simple things like taking them on a bus tour so that they could see how big the district is, and then specifically taking principals or assistant principals to the areas where their children reside. In the summers, through phase leadership, we also take teams of teachers and administrators out to those neighborhoods to let those folks know we want them to come back to school with us. And when we do that, we have a 95% success rate. Those children return, and their parents are happy, and the kids are happy that their teachers and administrators took the time out to visit their neighborhoods. We have a first-year principal mentorship program, and that's in progress. Ged and I sit down with one of our former administrators, Rita Turflinger, and we decide of the first-year principals which ones would benefit from some additional help. Simple things like, what do I do to prepare in the summer to work with my new staff? What are the most effective ways for me to incorporate what the district is asking me to do? And this is a totally confidential. She doesn't report back to us except for a broad report at the end of the year. We talk to the principals who are involved in the program. They really find it encouraging that they can get assistance from someone other than their director, just so they can bounce ideas off of Rita. And we want to expand that program, but we're very particular about who we would recruit to work with the principals. But in our vision, we would have probably 4 of those folks in Rita's role, and they would be working with first-year principals and APs. We have leadership learning communities with principals, with district support. And we have Human Capital Management University, which is supposed to be the umbrella for all of our professional learning, and it's slowly gaining traction. Right now we have all administrators, coaches, anyone that's going to be working with adults. They go through a crucial conversations, professional learning, and targeted feedback, because one of the things that we found is that it's hard to have those difficult conversations. And that if you give people the skills necessary to do it, you still need to coach and support them through that process. Because it's difficult to tell someone that they maybe aren't doing as well as they would like or as you would like. We're working again with Andy Cole and some others with the Wallace Principal Pipeline to identify ways to shore up our leadership recruiting for principals. And then with Patel for Kids, we have what's called the Human Capital Leaders in Education Professional Learning, and all of the cabinet have taken it. One person in cabinet who shall remain nameless got a waiver. All the directors, and we are going to roll that out to principals, probably not this summer because they have much on their plate, but I would guess next summer we would have them go through it. And what it is is a comprehensive overview of how HR works in the district, along with marketing and communications and other things that principals don't necessarily get exposed to, or they have to do it and they are not quite sure how effective they are at it. So that's the purpose of having them take that class. Next slide. For classified administrators, and this is an area that Ged and I constantly have to remind ourselves about, with leaders on the certified side, we have a lot of focus. With leaders on the classified side, we need to expand the options that we give them to grow professionally and to recruit people into those roles. I had the same challenge when I worked in journalism, where when you talk to people and told them you were working at a TV station or at a newspaper, the automatic assumption was 99% of the people that worked there were journalists. That wasn't the case. And we have the same issue with working at the school corporation. People say, well, 1,900 of your employees are teachers. That's correct. But we have 1,100 other employees who are not in the classroom, or they work in roles that are traditionally in any business. They're in accounting, they're in human resources. We do have a unique transportation arrangement, but again, those are jobs that we have to recruit for as well. And you can go around town and you can see that everyone that has a bus or a truck is looking for someone with a CDL. So we have those types of jobs, and I have a couple more notes about how we're going about doing that recruiting. But we have the same new administrator orientation, getting people out of Grile, out of their buildings, showing them the district, showing them nutrition services and other facilities. District support team is the folks that report to Kathy and I and Faye and some other directors that ancillary, not in the classroom, but important to the efforts that we have at Fort Wayne Community Schools. I already talked about Human Capital Management University and HCLE. Next slide. So, under implementation, monitoring, evaluations, and adjustments, we currently have a system of support, and we have detailed rubrics, and we went back and forth about this, but we decided that we would have specific rubrics for certain teachers. So we have one for special ed and others, and we have a general rubric for classified administrators, but we have a certified administrator for principals and APs rubrics, so we can get down to a detailed analysis of people's performance. And we chose the name Systems of Support for a reason. We did not want people to feel like there was a burden when we did an evaluation process with them. The idea is to help people be successful, not to tell them all the ways they're not. So we targeted that name. We use it, I think, effectively. And as far as for classified administrators, we have taken the best parts, we think, from the certified evaluation and used it to help us craft something for classified administrators. And then for other classified staff, those evaluations, we haven't quite finished them to my satisfaction, so that will be one of the first major projects that the new HR director gets to accomplish when we hire them. We also do annual engagement surveys, not just with our staff, but also with parents and students. And our feedback so far has been very high with the engagement surveys, but there's always room for improvement. Next slide. We have, I'm sure you're aware of, if you're not, we have professional learning communities for principals. We also work with other groups because we have decided that professional learning is critical to the development of our employees. And it, as you see in the 3 points, it helps them understand and value collaboration and communication. I think it bears noting that number 2 and 3, I think, are very important. It's very easy to become comfortable with what you're trying to accomplish, as opposed to always examining the work that you do and trying to be creative or find ways to address an issue. And when you're working as closely as we do with people, to keep them focused on being creative and trying to figure out a different way to help a child or to accomplish a task, we always had to have that in mind. But you also have to be willing to look at what you're doing and the thoughts that you have and the activities that you're engaged in order to be more successful. So, as I mentioned before, I don't think that there's any such thing, if there ever was, as a terminal degree, because you always have to be looking at improving your skills. The other two opportunities we have with leaders are to create and implement systems to address issues of inequity. There's always a group that feels left out. And one of the things that I think is important, not just in the classroom, but in all of our endeavors, is that children have an opportunity to see people in leadership roles that look like them. And we don't always have that. So we're working at helping managers, principals, supervisors think about what can we do to draw people in that may have the ability, but they just have never thought about, hey, you know what, I would like to be a programmer. But they don't have anybody in their family or anyone that they know of that does that kind of work. And that's not going to happen by accident. One of the things in my former life when I was a photographer, you might get an assignment to go shoot children playing. And I worked at Channel 33, so I drive down to Price, hop out of the van, take a few pictures, and go back. And one of my mentors said, you know, if you want to change what's happening on TV, when you get that assignment, the assignment editor didn't say, go down to Price. He said, I need 50 seconds of pictures of kids. So why don't you go down to Weiser Park? Why don't we go to historically black colleges and recruit teachers? Now, we found that's not been effective because most teachers come from a 50-mile radius of where they went to school, so we're going to have to be more proactive about where we recruit from, and I have some ideas about that I'll share. And then the deep learning, lifelong learners is number 5. So under construction continues with some of the activities that we have Battelle for Kids involved in. You know about the compensation project. We're going to have another component of that finished and implemented by July 1. We took principals aside last Friday and introduced them to the new HR processes and hiring system, and that's going to be implemented right after spring break. One of the things I mentioned was a Grow Your Own project that we're in partnership with Purdue Fort Wayne. I don't want to share too many details about that because it's still in the embryonic stage. But the idea is that we would identify children that work for, that attend our schools now, and then recruit them or help them get prepared to go to college, go to Purdue Fort Wayne if that's where they choose to go to, and have a system where they could be school assistants and then do their student teaching with us and then be employed with us as teachers and educators.
Do we have, you know, we have a fairly extensive scholarship program. Does anyone know, do we have any scholarships that specifically for students who are going into education? Or perhaps is there one in the pipeline?
I thought we had one, but I'm not sure about that, but we soon will have one.
That's what I meant.
Just
Yep.
letting you know.
So if we,
I think as a suggestion, that's hopefully something that the Fort Wayne Community School Foundation could work on.
We have Snider, Northrop, and probably Northside.
Yes.
Have extensive cadet teaching programs.
Right.
And one of the things, because Steve's been involved, when we find kids who are trying to go to college and need some support, even though we don't have an organized, we've been pretty successful trying to get kids where they need to go. But that's something we obviously, as a part of Charles's conversation, you know, we've got to be more aggressive. If you get teachers 50 miles from where they went to school, we need to keep them here.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I was dumbfounded about is that Purdue Fort Wayne has, I was told, has 600 kids in their education program. That's a lot of children. and most of them are within the radius that I described around Fort Wayne. And the benefit of growing your own is they know the culture, they know the processes that you use, and they're familiar with the kids because they grew up with them. So our target, especially in Austin Couch, who's in the audience, is working with Tony Bagshaw from Patel and the Purdue Fort Wayne folks to bring this into reality, because if we are successful, it lessens the economic impact on kids going to school, and it allows us to have a steady stream of educators. So that's something that we're really excited about.
But I think something we have got to work on in a lot of the efforts that the board members are engaged in. Public education's been beat up so much. The pool's drying up. Because Purdue Fort Wayne had 600, but people aren't going into education since it's been denigrated so much. So we've got to figure out a way to also grow our own and pump kids back up to let them know that this is a good way to make a living.
Yes.
And you can come here and have a job.
Right. And that's the
But
whole
we're
point
battling
of it.
that too.
Next slide. So in addition to the work that Get and I are doing on leadership, I have a few other projects that I'm working on. We have several collective bargaining agreements that are expiring, so we'll be engaged in negotiations with those groups, the nurses, classified, Teamsters among them. With health and wellness, and I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail because we'd be here much longer than the 30 minutes that I promised myself I would be presenting. We are working with Parkview, who's our clinic manager, to redesign what we're doing. That's another part of that. You're looking at, you're examining, you're deciding, is now the time to do something different with those clinics? We've had them for roughly 5 years. We're looking at benefits redesign, health and welfare, so medical, dental, vision. And there are some stage of life things that I think we should do with our benefits. You know, one size doesn't necessarily fit all. And one of the downfalls we've had with benefits is that you sign a contract and you kind of walk away and you don't really pay close attention to how much it's costing. Are the benefits still relevant? Do people have what they need when we talk to them about health care or dental or vision? We made some tweaks this year so that people can get eyeglasses every year now in each one of our plans. For someone that stares at a computer screen so many hours a day, that's a big deal. If you're young and you have kids, you may want to have the opportunity to get braces for them. So we're looking at those types of things. You've seen the billboards around town. We redesigned our main website. We're working with the schools, Krista and Jen and Austin, who was also a part of marketing communications, to make sure that the #1 place where people get information about our district, school websites and their mobile devices, that they're up to speed and as accessible as we can make them. Professional learning, and among other things, has brought up to speed a talent management system so that people can go and get access to different components to educate kids and to self-educate. We have multiple security system upgrades that we're involved in, and I will be glad to talk to each one of you one-on-one, but that's not something we really discuss in public. And then the 5-year tech plan, which includes one-to-one technology. A little bit more about wellness. Next slide. So one of the critical components of investing in wellness is that it saves. It saves in labor, because if people aren't sick, they're at work. But it also is a dollar saving. So our return on investment, we think, is pretty good. This is a conservative estimate of savings in 2019 and savings since Parkview has been managing the clinics. And by using the clinics, people don't have to access outside services. And our return on investment was completed on a transactional basis, so we're very conservative. It does not include potential savings for people who don't have a heart attack because they went through the lab work and we identified markers and we got people treated early. But this is a rough estimate of the savings at the clinics since 2016. Next slide. And this is real dollar savings for our employees. because they didn't have to make a copay, they didn't have to come out of pocket for prescription drugs or meet a deductible because they could go to the wellness clinic and get certain services. So since 2016, this is the actual savings that employees have made.
When we survey our employees, do we include, questions about the health clinics?
We ask them if they believe that we are concerned about their health. I know that's one specific question, and the response to that is very high.
Yeah.
And one of the selling points that is used for people to come and work for us is we have a very rich benefits plan. Compared to the other districts around and districts in the state, when Battelle for Kids did an analysis of our benefits, they said that we should probably be promoting that even more than we do, because we just have great benefits.
I thought they were great. I mean, if I had a family, I would certainly, want someplace like that where I could take my kids, not have to, I could go online and get an appointment or call and get an appointment, and oftentimes that day or the next day. And
Yes.
you get most common medicines free. And I mean, when I was on the employee health plan, I definitely used it.
Yeah, and we have a lot of people that do. We don't have as much utilization as I would like, and that's one of the reasons why we're looking at design, because there may be some things we could do to get more involvement. But that's just the clinics.
Are the health clinics for all employees?
They're for the employees who are on the plan and their dependents.
Okay,
So you have to be.
families.
One of the things we've talked about, but we don't have a way of doing it, is making it accessible to people who aren't on our insurance plan. But that's not, we can't do that right now. So even with the blood draw, when people, the lab work that we're doing now as a part of wellness, we do let people who aren't on the plan do that, but it's for a nominal cost. We try to do as much as we can to get people involved in wellness. But it's not just the nurses, and I want to do a shout out for several people. It's not just the clinics. The nurses are very involved in providing services for some of our children at FACE, where Faye is supervising the nursing staff over there or working with them. We've created an immunization program so that kids who aren't immunized, we go to them or they come to FACE, and they don't have to miss as much school time. We're doing things around diet and nutrition services. The nurses are very much a part of the process of wellness, not just for the adults, but also for the children. So we think that programs like that benefit everyone, because again, if kids aren't sick, they're in school. If they're in school, they're learning. And if the adults are there to teach them, that's a win-win for everybody. Last slide. On savings of chronic illness. We get a report every year, and as a part of our end-of-year benefits report, we're also going to attach the report we get from Parkview about chronic disease and the wellness of the district. And one of the things we've noticed since we've been doing this wellness is that over time you see a savings in expense around things like high blood pressure, diabetes. We were and are still a rather overweight workforce, but even those expenses are coming down. So you can see just in chronic illness savings over the last 3 years, we have almost $3 million. People are healthier because of the efforts of Mary and Gina and the nurses. So in summary, we are in progress working on Goal 4 to attract, develop, and reward high-performing staff, and that is critical for the success of the district. And as Get and I and the team work on this leadership component of the learning systems, I just want to point out a couple of reasons why it's important. Leaders, they have to be able to motivate every employee. And it's really, if you think about it, no different than what teachers have to do. They have to have an individual education plan, special ed. The ability or the desire or the need for people to learn does not stop once you get a degree or you graduate high school or you drop out of high school. And we need to pay more attention of helping people do that. if, and I believe it is, we are trying to create a culture of collaboration, and again, it doesn't stop at the classroom. One of the eye-opening things for me is we created a program specifically to help kindergartners and first graders not get lost on the first day of school. And gathered what I thought was everybody together, came up with a plan, and after we implemented the plan, was told, well, you know, you probably should have told nutrition services about it because the time you wanted to do the practice was when they were supposed to be delivering lunch. Not a big deal. I mean, when I talked to Candace, she said, keep me in the loop and we can work with you. Well, that type of communication has to be ongoing in every system. So we need to work on that. And finally, having those crucial conversations and working with people and telling them where they are outstanding and where they need to improve has to be a part of what we do in order to help the district be successful and for us to be successful as employees. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
We've talked about this before, but what is our biggest need as far as jobs? Do we still have some that are not filled?
If you are, I would say, teachers, we do pretty well. We're at 95+%. School assistants in the 80s. Frank's down 50 bus drivers. And that is spilling over into classroom. We can't get the kids there in a timely fashion like we would like. We get them there as quickly as we can. And it's also impacting what we can do after school or on the weekends. So I would say in terms of one job, that's probably the job we need help with the most. And we are pulling out all the stops. We're paying people if they refer folks. We're paying them retention bonuses. Frank's got some new ideas we're going to talk about and bring to Dr. Robinson soon. But that, everyone is looking for folks with CDLs. Second to that, I would say it's probably as critical is administrators. We have made adjustments in our pay scale. We've done things to recruit people. We have our largest, or one of our largest internship groups, but we need administrators. We're going to have, on average, we probably lose 120 educators. That's teachers and administrators. But we have positions that we could not fill this year, assistant principals specifically. And then we have a couple of principal vacancies that we have. And we know that there are several people that we can no longer persuade to stay with us. They're going to retire. So that's going to be someplace that Ged will be knocking on my door saying, what else can you do to help me? I need to find some more administrators. But in terms of sheer numbers, it's bus drivers.
Thank you. If I want to just say something about that administrative piece. You saw so much of Charles's work around professional learning and just leadership at all levels. Because teachers need, even if they're in the classroom, they need to understand how to manage all the stuff and to figure out how to lead a classroom. But I think the administrators have gotten such a bad rap because the state's been really good about pitting folks against each other. But the building principalship, let's just start there. Everybody in the community focuses on the building principal. The teachers, the parents, the students, the state, central office. And when you look at the amount of hours, Julie and I were having a conversation the other day about just athletic directors. They never go home.
Nope.
Because kids are at high schools 7 days a week. And so when we look at our administrators, people are thinking of a 1950s principal. And it has expanded to the point that good people, especially young people, don't want to give up family time.
Right.
Because I don't want to be in my building 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So we are really having to, we have really great teachers that we think they don't want to, who would willingly want to put a target on your back? So the next crisis is the administrative, but administrators are seen as you high-paid people, there are too many of you. Teachers don't want to give up that autonomy or having a life. So we are really struggling. We can get people to apply, but we're not looking for warm bodies. So those are conversations that whether I'm here or not, we're going to have to continue. And when people talk about the benefits teachers don't have, multiply that. First of all, for administrators, the other group are classified employees. You know, classified folks who have to change diapers, classified folks who have to do some of the things that the rest of us don't want to. We've got to balance, because it's the bus drivers are the most visible because the buses are late. But every single elementary classroom, school is missing folks to go out on the playground.
School assistant.
School assistants. So there's some hidden impacts to denigrating public education that we're going to have to really be more upfront about. And that's the whole point of Charles's presentation.
Yeah, one of the things, and Dr. Robinson's right, one of the things that we were, I won't say surprised, but pleasantly encouraged by, is that we offered on August 7th for classified staff to come and learn more about deep learning and be prepared for the school year. One of the principals had said to me several times, it would really be helpful if you could do that. So we did that, and 700 people showed up. And after that was over, they said, we want more. So at the complex schools, they're involved in PL, but there's a hunger out there for that I don't think we'll be able to satiate, but that's good, because that means that they're going to be better prepared to work with our kids.
Charles, might we ever consider with classified staff a model where we would have a school at work? I'm familiar with some hospital systems that actually offer instruction to upgrade and promote their classified staff to other positions of need within their hospital, but might we consider that for our schools, where we would actually bring the instruction to our buildings that would mitigate that issue of convenience, or provide the issue of convenience to them for positions that would require some type of certification or degree?
Location-wise, I can't say that I've thought about where we would do it, but one of the projects that Ramona is working on with professional learning is giving classes and people getting certified in certain issues. The whole idea around Human Capital Management University is to have things like that for classified and certified staff. So, for example, Get and I are working on what do we need to do, what kind of professional learning should we provide for a school year assistant principal to prepare them to be a year-round assistant principal once they've finished the internship program. And we have some programs that phase staff are helping school assistants with to be certified, that she's paying out of her grant, to get them better prepared to be school assistants, but we haven't developed the program enough to take them to the next level. Yeah. So we are slowly growing that process, but it is something that's definitely on our radar.
Yeah.
But that's got to be a commitment that the district has to make financially.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we're hesitant about, since we don't necessarily get the support for the complexity kinds of things we need, we've gone out to get grants. But when the grant runs out, you start something and somebody's in the middle of it. So we struggle with that. The other thing is, and especially with our classified, and some of our younger teachers, they have 2 jobs.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to figure out is how to do some stuff online, because there's just so many, so nothing is off the table, Steve, is the answer to it. And part of what we've got to figure out, especially with our classified folks, is what were the gaps they're missing. We're not, we're not turning down any person that we see as being able to help us in the future. But sustainability of the support is the problem we have right now. Because the worst thing is to start it, and we can't finish it. But we're thinking about all those things.
Well, I just wanted to tell you, I appreciated the report. It's important. I'll repeat what I said the first day of school, that human capital is our most important asset. And as long as you've dragged all these people into this meeting, I just want to add that my work has taken me to a number of school districts across the country. And I will tell you that the culture here is second to none. I will not name the schools or the districts, but I cringe at some of those buildings I walk in. They're just not Fort Wayne. And there's a culture here that we've kept over the years, and as leaders change, the commitment remains the same, and folks, you do a great job. We're not perfect, but I think we're always looking for solutions to improve what we do. So it begins really with what you folks are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terrell.
Thanks,
Thank
Charles.
you.
Thanks, audience.
Okay, that brings us to the close of our meeting. We meet again on Monday, March 9th. Member comments, Steve?
Well, I saw on social media over the weekend that a certain Dylan Duff, Snider High School star, has decided to attend the second most expensive school in the state of Indiana. So we're going to start passing the hat for Ann Duff,
Get passing it, please.
because I think her entire family will be eating ramen noodles for the next 4 years. It's a great school, and I know Dylan's going to do really, really well.
Thank you.
Got to be awfully proud of him.
Go Engineers.
Yeah. That all you had? Well, this weekend I had the opportunity to go to Snider to see the Winter Guard perform, and I just have to say hats off to those students and parents and the coaches. It was amazing, the performance that they did. They even broke down the exercises that the students do. So it's just amazing. You think that, you know, twirling those rifles and those. I took my niece with me, and she said, "Did you do this when you were in school?" And I was like, "No, I'm not coordinated enough. I would have hit myself in the head." So it was really great, and I was really excited to be invited to that performance. So it was just incredible what our students are doing on the weekends, and that principal was also in the building, so with his wife. So I think they made a, date night at the school during the Winter Guard performance. So yes, they are always there. And then I also had the opportunity to go to the Northside Jazz Festival and see Jefferson Middle School and Memorial Park Middle School perform. And so again, teachers working on the weekend, getting those students there, parents paying $6 to watch their students perform. They were there all day, so my hat's off to them as well. And again, principals were also in the building, so again, always there. A couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go down to the State House with the Indiana School Board Association, and we had a day at the State House. There were so many bills that we went over, my brain was just in circles, but probably the bill that I thought was one to sort of bring out and highlight was House Bill 1204, Education Matters. This bill will allow school corporations to keep early graduates in their count. What was happening before is that those schools or the districts that had early graduates would not be able to count them in their spring count, and so losing funding, which the legislature thankfully sees as punishing school districts that are getting those students to graduation a little bit sooner. And also tucked into that bill is more accountability for virtual charter schools. And so all of the news that we're seeing about what was happening with virtual charter school recently in our state, I just think that that is great that they are going to be held more accountable. So again, that was House Bill 1204, and there are three weeks left in this session, this short session. So, and then Julie and I had an opportunity to attend a leadership conference for school boards, and lots of good things there, but just some information regarding new member orientation or onboarding new members as we get them. And so I think that while we have the time, it might be good to relook at that information so that as we get new board members, we can acclimate them a little bit better. So, and that's all I had.
Okay, thanks, Maria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I attended the neuroscience of deep learning with Dr. Jean Clinton. And one of the things that she kept touching on that I was interested in is just the importance of relationships, especially with teachers and any staff person and students. Partially because I'm always looking for ammunition for my letters to my legislators, because with the high stakes testing and just the pressure of everything behind that, I wonder if our teachers have that still have the opportunity to build those relationships with their students, because I know that was just so important. When I was a student, my teachers saw things in me that I didn't know were there. They yeah, you can take this honors class, you do that, wow, you did a great job, just a pat on the back. I was an athlete, and when even teachers who I didn't have would come up and say, wow, good job in a mile last night, and things like that just meant so much to me. And I see it in my kids. I know the relationships with the teachers are so important to my children, especially my youngest. I know that if he doesn't have that relationship, he's not going to do anything for that teacher. But if that teacher shows interest in him, then he'll perform. So I just want to remind teachers out there to, just make sure you continue to build those relationships with your students, because they're so important. Just recognize them for just little things that they do. Just make sure you acknowledge them. And one thing about the teaching profession is that, you do this, but sometimes you don't realize the impact you have, because these kids aren't going to come back and say, gee, thanks, for the other day for telling me how great I did on that test, or for saying I did a good job in the mile. They're not going to recognize you for that. Sometimes, 30 years later, they may come back and tell you, you meant so much to me. And at that time, I was probably a goofy kid and didn't really give you any respect. But that you do make an impact as a teacher on these students, and sometimes you never hear that you do. So that doesn't mean to stop doing that. Just continue to build those relationships with students and let them know that they are important to you.
Thanks, Ann. Dr. Robinson?
Jean Clinton will be at Northside tomorrow starting at 6. We finished the day with principals, and I think they're going to be doing a lot of recruiting of people to listen to Dr. Clinton. The takeaway that what I took out of her presentation today, and I heard her before. We talk about deep learning, we talk about the 6 C's, we talk about teaching students to be critical thinkers. High-priced universities still want kids who can think on their feet, even if they know what they want to do. By the time he graduates, it may be a totally different profession. But what she said to us is the concept of well-being, and that you don't learn anything you can't have emotion around, and that the whole conversation around students applies to adults. So stop and think about that for a moment. How many of us, and we have great employees, but it's hard to get passionate about something and want to learn more if it has no interest to you and there's no connection. So she's going to be at Northside tomorrow. It may be standing room only. She's from Scotland, and I think we're mesmerized by her accent. But she just makes this whole well-being and deep learning, it's just common sense. It's what teachers have. They don't have a name for it, but it's what good teachers do. So we talked a lot about relationships, and I don't want to talk a lot about it tonight. We had a situation today, and I think it's just going to get worse, that the role of social media in terms of spreading rumors that aren't really founded. And what was so disappointing today in the situation that we had is grown-ups were doing it. And so it's bad enough when we have students who will start a rumor and then pass it on. So we're going to be working with our grown-ups. So we're going to have some very targeted conversations at our schools, because that's just the way of the world now. And we've got to look at relationships, we've got to be talking with our parents. But it is amazing how an untruth travels faster than the truth. We won't talk about the winter guard, but one person can make something up. And in a matter of minutes, it's all over the city. So the negativism of, the positives about social media, but I was heartbroken today when you started investigating it. It wasn't the kids. The kids got it from grown-ups. And so we've got some work to do, and it starts with relationships. That's on us to create those relationships. But the whole community has to kind of help us. You know, it was on the internet, it must be true. And that's really becoming our reality. So, thank you.
I'm glad Maria mentioned House Bill 1204. I want to thank Noah Smith for forwarding the State Board of Accounts investigative report on the Indiana Virtual School and the Indiana Virtual Academy. I read the entire thing. And I actually gave it to a friend of mine who's an accountant and works in that world. And first of all, the amount of self-dealing that went on in that, the incestuous relationships between the person writing the checks was the owner of this company, and somebody else that worked at the school was the owner of this other company, and they were all paying themselves, and, you know, to the tune of $85 million in fraud. 68 million of it, I think, is taxpayer money. So the bill that Maria mentioned, 1204, is in the Senate Appropriations Committee right now. So if I have written my senator and the senators in the area, if, you know, the talk out of the State House is that they're concerned with fraud and concerned with that kind of thing. So hopefully they will support House Bill 1204. I don't think it goes far enough. I mean, we as a public school get audited every 2 years by the State Board of Accounts, correct? Why shouldn't charter schools get audited every 2 years by the State Board of Accounts? Why shouldn't any school, including a private school that receives public funds, get audited every 2 years by the State Board of Accounts? That notion seems to be foreign to some of our legislators, although, as I have said many times, they got the system that they designed. They didn't want those people to have any accountability. Many of them are big donors to legislators, and in some ways, the system worked exactly as they designed it. So, but hopefully, it will prompt some change. Well, that's all I have. So the other interesting thing, you also mentioned in 1204 about schools being able to, not getting basically penalized because they have early graduates. When we went to Central Noble for that leadership, their principal told us they had, is it this year? They're going to have 120, now Central Noble is not a very big school. They're going to have 121 early graduates. But it doesn't change your utility bill. You can't let teachers go halfway through the year or other staff go halfway through the year. I mean, it doesn't change your costs. So I think as far as a fiscal management bill, it's really important. So that's another aspect of House Bill 1204. So, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Steve, and all those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Microphone is open. I see you're all rushing to get there to the microphone.